Right. Welcome back to CS Mob. I am incredibly excited to have Paula Haines of Freedom a la carte with us today. Paula, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Paula Haines, the CEO of Freedom a la carte. Freedom is a nonprofit social enterprise that we operate a catering business and a cafe that empowers survivors of human trafficking through workforce development, wraparound services, and long-term support so that survivors can become self-sufficient and live a life of freedom.
Amazing. And Freedom a la carte's been around for like a decade, right? What's the timeline of its
Yeah,
existence?
actually, the organization's been around for almost 15 years. The social enterprise catering business started 2011, and then we opened the cafe 5 years ago.
Okay. All right. I knew some of the stuff was recent. So what was it like to come in as the CEO? Because, right, you were recruited outside of Freedom a la carte.
Well, actually, I wasn't recruited. I started as a volunteer.
Okay.
So I stepped in to learn more about human trafficking and have come from an entrepreneur background. I owned my own marketing company at the time for about 10 years. And so I was just looking for a way to volunteer. It's always been a part of who I am. And my friends were talking about this catch court and human trafficking, and I wanted to learn more. So I attended their Abolition U course and was like, it's one of those things that once you learn what's happening to women in our community, you can't unlearn it. And you just want to do something to help. And so I knew I wanted to get involved from an entrepreneurial perspective. I loved the social enterprise aspect of having a business that helps the programs that you're offering and then giving a woman a job so she can then take care of herself. I loved that. And I love to cook. So I hopped in and started helping in the kitchen, working along survivors, building relationships, and then
Amazing.
along the way recognized just different areas where I could jump in and offer more assistance. I helped launch a fundraising event for them to just raise money so that they could offer benefits to staff members and was invited to the board. And then in 2016, we were trying to find the next leader, had been through a few hires that we realized were not the right fit. And so I stepped off the board to be the interim director. And that was 10 years ago. And so
So
still
you
doing
were
that.
recruited
Yeah.
just in a very different, longer pipeline recruitment.
Yes.
What has been like the biggest learning curve or takeaway for you from from like marketing for profit to going to a social enterprise? Because it's a mindset shift, I'm certain.
It absolutely is. Not only it was that kind of a mind shift, but also the food industry. Like I didn't really have any experience in food. So I was really stepping into the unknown. The only thing I had was a passion and a purpose. And I think that I understood that I didn't have all the answers. And so while that was the biggest challenge, I also think that was my greatest asset was not being afraid to ask others for help because I wasn't expected to have all the answers in that space at that time. And so from a woman's standpoint, I think I carried a lot of guilt through my life and high expectations. Like I need to have the answers, I need to know. And so in this space, it was kind of teaching myself that no, you don't have the answers and that's not expected of me. And then gave me that freedom to go seek others and gain from others' experience and insight. Actually pull people into the fold because I really, really need them.
I mean, do you still find that? I find as a business owner, I don't have all the answers. I'm just willing to ask questions to try and get there. Do you feel like that's the same for you?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that was has been one of my biggest takeaways is that really no one has all the answers. Like we're all making it up and trying to figure it out as we go.
Uh-huh.
And really just seeking people that are maybe one or two steps ahead of us on that journey and learning from them. We also are learning from others and questions that we get asked and like, oh gosh, no one's ever asked me that before. Like, why do we do it that way? And be able to take those questions and reflect on them and maybe, make shifts so that you are doing things better.
Have you found like a wonderful resource? Is it a person, a system, a thing that
Ooh.
really helped you kind of step into this role and thrive, even though you, like you said, didn't have all the answers?
Yeah, I think one thing is the EOS operating system. So it's the entrepreneurial operating system that is, you can read the book Traction, and then that explains this EOS system.
I
And
think I've got it
we
somewhere on the bookshelf behind
are,
me.
oh, you do? Yeah.
Yeah, because
So
we're
our,
actually bringing in a leader to help us run a level 10 meeting from EOS.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, but
Yes.
keep
So
keep going for people who don't know what the heck EOS is.
my board chair was using it in her business and suggested that I read the book. And then what it provided was a structure. It just gives you that framework. Like sometimes if you just tell me like what to do, I can follow the plan, but you just walk in, you're not quite sure what to do. And the thing about EOS is it helps you plan for growth. So, as you know, instead of a org chart where you're just looking at who's currently in the business, you lay out a accountability chart, like there are certain things that someone has to do regardless of how large you are. And you realize like all the different seats that you yourself as a leader are sitting in, and which ones like you need to start getting rid of as you expand the team. And just having that in place has really helped us. We don't use it religiously, like we use what fits for us. We do the
Hmm.
level 10 meetings, we pull different elements from it. The vision organizer or the vision tracker organizer, the VTO, we use that every year. So I've really relied on that as a framework for the organization.
Yeah. So I think one of the things when I first started kind of implementing some of EOS was this piece of identify issues that IDS at the end because people weren't super comfortable being like, this thing doesn't work. Right. And it's usually for us anymore, it's not big stuff, but it's like, hey, this little like automation is just like a touch off. Can we tweak it? How did you, with your management team, help build that relationship where they could come and say, hey, Paula, it's not working here? Because I think that's a piece of it.
And I think with that, so something else that, in employing survivors of human trafficking, we kind of stepped into this role knowing that we're now hiring people with barriers and severe trauma and mental health, substance use disorder. Like we knew that coming into this. And so having systems in place helps with that. And with the issue processing, I think it helps us to understand we're processing an issue or a system. It's not like a person or a person. There's not a breakdown in a person. It's a breakdown in the system or a breakdown in communication. And as you see that as an issue processing opportunity, it just frames it a little bit different than what I think we are used to in a traditional work setting, to be honest.
Yeah.
What we've learned though over the years is that not only are we employing survivors in our program who are experienced with trauma and recovering from trauma and other barriers, like that's the type of person that we attract throughout our whole business. And so as we put things in place to address those issues and help people relate to each other in a trauma informed, what we call now trauma competent way, is beneficial to the whole organization, not just a small group of identified individuals that we're serving. If that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. I want to kind of leave EOS and ask you how do you, I don't want to say like find employees, but how are you helping women get out of human trafficking? What does that look like? Because that's certainly a component of the business itself.
So yeah, we're clear to people that we don't really help with people getting out of the life. We really specialize in someone else taking care of that, typically law enforcement and other nonprofits coming in for that initial rescue, safety, safe
Okay.
house. How do we help you? And so it's really having strong partners. And then we expect that they'll be taken care of and go through a program. And what we realized is that once they finish a program or are at least 6 months into a program, that's when like services start to drop off. And so we step in with obviously work being one important element. And so we bring people in for workforce development in that way. And then we realized that even with workforce, once people graduate any type of a program, there's all of those resources, that sense of community that's so important to someone's recovery, that all drops off. And we saw that effect on individuals' lives and relapse and people going back and being re-exploited. And so that's when we formed what we call the Butterfly Program to fill that gap so that people can have services as long as they need them for life if they want. And so what's happened over the years is that, getting back to your question about how we connect with individuals, is it's through the different programs, but also through referrals. And we see now more and more of survivors referring survivors to our program. And that is
That's gotta
huge
be
on how, that's
rewarding.
primarily how we get referrals. Yeah, it's neat to see the growth, and
Yeah.
it's long-term recovery. Like this journey takes a long time, and so you have all the tools in your tool belt, but life is hard. And so you can be doing really well and then, experience a death of a loved one or a loss of a job or something. And those things are hard to get through without a strong support system. And so we see ourselves as that support system for individuals, a place where they can come, a safety net, and we can walk with them in through that period.
Okay, and that's then funded by the catering and the cafe, and I'm assuming fundraising as well, because I know those are busy parts, but that can't be it.
That's correct. The supportive services, all of those extra wraparound services that we provide are all funded through grants and contributions. But the social enterprise itself is self-sustaining, earns a profit that then can help those programs.
Okay,
So,
amazing.
and I have to say, oh, going back to how we connect with individuals from the formation of our organization, we have partnered with Catch Court. And Catch Court is a specialty docket in Franklin County, specifically for individuals who've experienced human trafficking. And so since 2009, we've walked together on this journey and built relationships with their individuals, providing lunch each week as they're in court. We provide mentors as they're going through that program. And then we help them with individual needs. And we have a peer supporter that will help individuals in that program. And we provide outings each month for individuals in that program. So that has been kind of the foundation of our referral, but then it's kind of grown and matured over the years.
I mean, that's great. You're building a sense of community just from like the very get-go. And I should say, Catch Court is one of the few courts in Ohio because it's a specialty docket. It doesn't exist everywhere. And I think Franklin County and maybe Cuyahoga have something similar, but it's a very rare program. And so it's wonderful that you can partner with Catch Court because it's a great
Yes.
asset to the community. What do you think's next? Because you when we talked about how the organization has grown, it started from catering to now a brick and mortar. What do you think's in the pipeline?
So that's a great question, and something that we've worked on over the course of years. Like, what makes sense for us? Does it make sense for us to continue to grow within Columbus and do multiple cafes and spread that blueprint around the city? And what we've concluded is that in talking with people around the country, that there aren't services, the long-term services and the workforce development opportunity for survivors in other areas. Like, people recognize the need for rescue to get individuals out of the life and for that first
Few
phase
months.
of program and support. But after that, there's not anything. And that's where we specialize. And so understanding there's a need for what we're doing in other markets, we've been exploring where else could we go, and in looking at how we formed and the needs and what's offered in other cities. Of course, there's so much here in Ohio that we looked in Ohio, what makes sense, where would we go? And so we've been working toward an expansion in Cleveland, because like you said, they do have specialty dockets up there, very similar. They have a very strong network, a human trafficking coalition that's really strong up there. Been over the last few years taking steps to expand. Just this year, we've started services. So we're doing small scale services and helping, our butterfly program, that long-term program of support. We are now starting to launch that in Cleveland. And as that grows and we kind of get more comfortable, people identify who we are, then the plan is to open a cafe and do cafe and catering there to support that work that we're doing.
That's really incredible. I just keep smiling ear to ear because I'm like, that's so amazing to be able to grow into another market like that. I do want to ask you about the business component of it, right? Because you have to know that makes sense. How much of that is tied to like, here's our core value and missions, and we want to make sure we carry that out? How much is driven by like opportunity and economics? I'm just curious, like, what's the assessment look like when you're like, oh, I want to go into a new market?
So both. It's really very mission driven. So that kind of helped us determine to go into a new market. Because from a business standpoint, if we were just looking at the business and economics, it would make more sense to grow within Columbus first and open other cafes. But we're not going to be able to serve as many women. And in that aspect, that's one of the reasons, like, hey, let's see if we can help more women by launching this in a new city. So we are always trying to balance both, like the mission versus the economics. At one point in catering, and that's the thing about growth, is that we've learned to sometimes you just have to slow down and pause a little bit and let your team catch up with the growth. But an example of that is with our catering business. And I remember, there was a certain amount that we would do, and people were, we were growing, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is way too much. Like, we have too much. And so I said, fine, like, let's figure out what the amount is. And after that, we don't take any more orders. Like, we started to say no. And so we had to say no for a few months to some orders, but it was amazing how the team, then came together and
Mm-hmm.
started realizing that that amount was not a big deal anymore. Like, no, bring us more. We can do more. We can do more. And so just really starting to understand that that balance of growth with the team's kind of capacity and comfort, and then using that as a measure to grow in a more comfortable way, more
Yeah.
intentional, I should say.
I think that's really smart is you want to grow, but you see a lot of these people who they want a 10x in 3 months. And you're just like, you can do that, but you're going to be left with a mess because you grew too fast. And so it really does take a strong leader to say like, let's grow, but let's temper it so that we're doing it in a sustainable way. So I think that probably speaks to a lot of your leadership, Paula, of I hear you. And so let's step in and figure out how do we do this growth smart. So
I
hats
think
off.
it goes back to having people around you to help guide, and because I think as a leader or as a visionary, as we say in EOS, I'm always ready to go to the next thing. And the fact that this growth into Cleveland is taking longer than I ever thought it would
Oh yeah,
is
you
can
have
be
to be
really
going crazy.
frustrating, right? And so you need people around you who help, like, it's okay, like we're doing it the right way, and to where you can get comfortable with it. Because will like share with my team some ambitious goals and a vision, which is important, but then also like being able to step back when we're not hitting that and say, okay, that was not realistic, but we're still moving in that direction. It's just going to take us a little bit longer. Um,
Hmm.
I'm still trying to balance that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, my team jokes that like I've jumped in the pool and swam laps and they're still on the deck, like debating whether they're getting
Yes.
in. We've gotten closer in that, but it was them calling me out for going so fast that I was like, oh, okay, I need to slow down so that you all jump in the pool around the same time as me.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It works better in the end, but it's a lesson.
Yeah.
It's an adjustment as a leader.
Do you feel though, sometimes when you set like big audacious goals that they scare you and they certainly I think scare your team a little bit, that it does help drive where you're trying to go because even if you don't hit it, you went that direction. You're moving towards it.
Yeah, I think you have to have a vision and a target that you're a place where you're going. It really helps motivate the team. And actually, as a small business, especially because you hire some people and they grow to become really, really great. And if you don't have anywhere else for them to grow into or for them to see a place for themselves in 2 or 3 years within your organization because it's just the same, then you're going to lose those people. And so I think it's helped us, our culture, to kind of share that vision together and all be on the journey as one. But I tell you, the other thing that I learned early on was, when you make a wrong, you're going to make wrong decisions and you pivot and learning to pivot and understanding that, one of them was we were invited by the Columbus Metropolitan Library to open a cafe when they opened the North Side branch on High Street. They had renovated the building and they were opening this little cafe, and they invited us to rent the space and run a cafe from there. And this was and we thought, oh, this is a great opportunity for us. We were very flattered that they invited us.
Yeah.
There was an RFP, we won the RFP, and then we opened up this little cafe. And what we learned over a course of a year was that no one really wanted to work there. Everyone wanted to be back in the main kitchen where the rest of the team was. Like, that community is really, really important. But this helped us identify that, right?
Yeah.
And so we were hiring people in who weren't survivors to operate this little cafe that was losing money. And the location was not great. It was hidden, etc. And so we finally just made a decision that we would kind of break our contract, continue to pay the rent and lose less money than we were by operating it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we reached out to the library and said, I'm sorry, but this is where we are and this is what we've decided to do. We're very transparent. And they agreed. They said, we totally get it. You've done a great job, but was just not the right plan for this space. And so they never put another cafe in that space. They allowed us out of that contract. And we learned a ton. Like, we really learned, like, this doesn't work for us. And what works is when we're all together in one space, which led to the space we have now, where we do catering, we do the cafe, and we have all of our supportive services in the same building. And that's the
Hmm.
secret sauce. That's the specialty.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes total sense. Yeah. We've tried a number of things at our office, from changing how fees work to we added an office in Minnesota, and those didn't work. And so, but every one of us has learned something when we try. And I think that's a huge part, is like, try. You're not married to it. If it doesn't work, take action and, go back to what's working for you. I think it makes complete sense. Well, Paul, I could talk to you for hours. We had a prep call before this and we did talk for a very long time, but we are hitting the end of podcast attention span. But I want to ask you the one question that I ask everyone, which is, what is one piece of advice for someone who is looking to start a business, or like you, step into an existing business and run it, that you wish you had known when you started? Or maybe you did know, but that was powerful to you.
So I think I've mentioned it, is that you don't have to have all the answers to bring others in and widen your circle. I think that, and the other thing I would say, another tip would be to ask yourself, what can you stop doing? So I
Yeah.
think that when we started, we tried to be too much. We tried to be a full catering operation and do weddings. And, if somebody wanted us to do something, we would figure out how to do it instead of saying, this is what we do and this is what we do really well. And that's how we kind of pivoted and became a drop-off caterer that specializes in breakfast and lunch. And by narrowing down, we're able to do it and do it really, really well instead of trying to be all things. It took us a while to get there, but I think that's what's helped us is I think when you're starting, you feel so desperate to succeed
You say yes to
that you just
everything.
will say yes, yes, yes. And so some of that's necessary, but I think you need to then continue to keep asking yourself, what can I stop doing? What can I stop doing? What am I doing well? And what can I stop doing?
Yeah,
So
I love that. Thank you so much, Paula, for being on the pod. If anyone is wanting to support the social enterprise, you totally should. Their catering and their cafe are wonderful. In the notes will be links to how you can support Freedom a la carte.
awesome. And it's our